We have seen the reopening of Melbourne's Holocaust Museum. It's attracted dignitaries from across the country and the political spectrum. Let's bring in Holly Edwards-Smith. She's been at the museum for us this morning. Holly, we saw a bit earlier a real bipartisan show of support for the Jewish community at that launch.
Ash, it certainly has been a day of bipartisan support for the reopening of the Melbourne Holocaust Museum. It has attracted dignitaries from across the country, including the Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, the federal opposition leader, Peter Dutton, the new Premier of Victoria, Jacinta, Allan, also attended in what was their first formal event with the Prime Minister, Mr Albanese. There were also a number of local and federal MPs. Also in attendance were Holocaust survivors who have been part of the museum's messaging for quite some time. There was also Josh Frydenberg, former Liberal Treasurer, in attendance. He was thanked by a number of speakers, not only for his support of the Melbourne Holocaust Museum and assistance in securing funding for this redevelopment, but also his support of Holocaust museums around the country. But it certainly was a day of bipartisan support, echoing messages of love rather than hate, and both the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and opposition leader Peter Dutton echoed similar sentiments when they condemned the attacks on Israel on October 7.
Since the atrocities of the terrorist action by Hamas on October 7, Jewish Australians have been bearing a pain you should never have had to bear again. And you are feeling fear, anxious that the long shadows of the past have crept into the present.
We stand here today in the aftermath of obscene and unfathomable acts of anti-Semitism on our own soil. In the context of these events, the opening of this museum today is even more poignant and pertinent.
Ash, to talk more about the reopening and what Melbourne Holocaust Museum has to offer is co-president Mike Debinski. Mike, thank you for joining me this afternoon, and also congratulations on the reopening. How does it feel to be here and to be joined by dignitaries from across the country today?
Very proud, emotional, very important that we had bipartisan support for the work we're doing, particularly now given the rise in anti-Semitism and what's going on around the world. Very, very important that we have that.
Now, the museum has been doing work to educate people on the Holocaust for many, many years, but this reopening will now have 2 permanent exhibits. Can you explain what they are?
The first, which is very unique, is called Hidden, and it traces the stories of 7 children who were hidden, like Anne Frank, during the war, and ended up building lives in Australia. It's very interactive and targeting younger children. And the second is a permanent exhibition, which tells the story of the Holocaust, but through Melbourne eyes, through people who came here, who survived, and tells their story.
Now, through the speeches today, education has shone through as one of the major issues that the Melbourne Holocaust Museum would like to address and continue working towards. What is the importance of educating people, particularly with what's happening not only here in Melbourne but around the world at the moment?
The founders really created this museum because of a view that it should never happen again, and that there are learnings and there's a story there that needs to be told, and it needs to be told to new generations. So it's vital. It's really our core role, is to educate young people, but also adults, about the Holocaust and about the meaning of that in today's world.
Thank you, Mike, and congratulations again on the reopening. Ash, the Melbourne Holocaust Museum is open now. It's open on a number of weekdays and all day Sunday to school groups and people, particularly of 10 years and older. Of course, it can contain some material that can be distressing, but as we've just heard from Mike there, important information, important education that people here in Victoria now have access to in the southeastern suburbs.